I get Karen stuck on a roller coaster because she keeps bullying a kid for his looks. I work at an amusement park and we have this ride called Moby Dick. This ride is 100% controlled by the operator. A couple of weeks ago, this woman and her friend came up to my ride, making fun of one of the kids that was on the ride. She was saying so many hateful things about how they look. Without even looking at her, I told her to stop, and this is how it went. I said, "You're literally talking about a 7-year-old like that. You need to stop or you will not be allowed on the rides." And she said, "But it's true. Look at them." "Don't disrespect other guests, please. It's not okay." And her friend said, "Stop, Karen, before you get us in trouble again." "Oh, whatever." When the ride was finished, I started letting the next group of people in. I said, "Do not pull down on the bars, pick any seat you'd like," to everyone as they walk in, since pulling on the bars can break the seats over time. I let a group of young boys in before Karen's group and they sat at the end seats. Karen marches over to the kids and starts yelling at them to get out of her seat and says that she paid to sit at the end. I said, "Miss, please stop yelling at the kids or you'll be removed from the ride with no refund in tickets." "Don't tell me what to," and her friend chimed in again. "Stop it, Karen, just sit in the middle." She complained the whole time walking to the middle seats and then pulled down the bar. I was thinking it was time to get a manager over, but I didn't want to bother them with her. Once I got everyone seated, I closed all the seat bars. When I was checking the seats, Karen's one was on the loose side, so I pushed it in a little to make it tighter. "You're trying to kill me. First you left my seat open and now you're making it so I can't breathe." I ignored her and kept checking the seats. When I finally started the ride, I slowly rock it and Karen was screaming to take her off. So I make the ride go faster, doing full circles now. Halfway during the ride, Karen screams, "Stop the ride, you fricking witch!" Oh, she wants me to stop it? Fine with me. I park the ride at the top of the ride like I do when closing, but I keep the ride on. The 6 others on the ride weren't scared that the ride had stopped, but Karen started screaming bloody murder, crying and begging to be let down. The parents watching know what she said to and in front of their kids and know what's going on and start laughing. After about 30 seconds, she was screaming, "Let me down!" still. So I do that on the fastest setting. I start the ride spinning full speed. I made the ride a little longer since all the kids were having so much fun. Before I opened the seats, I screamed a warning. Wait for the bars to be fully open and stay above your head before getting up. Stay seated. And Karen, of course, pushes it up and gets up, having the bar fall back down and hit her in the head. Her friend laughed at her and then got up and walked her off the ride. So in short, a Karen bullied kids and didn't listen to rules. So when she told me to stop the ride, I left her on top, then made it go full speed, making her cry. Then she hit her head on the seat bar. You're probably a bit of a jerk for bullying this woman, but much like Batman, sometimes we need people like you to bring the real villains of this world to justice. And this woman is a C-word. So as long as you use your jerk powers for good and keep them directed at awful people like this, I'm not going to take you down. There are a lot of minor details that I love about this story, the biggest being the fact that Karen was such a regular, constant causer of drama that her friend publicly admitted that she regularly causes massive scenes like this and told her to knock it off. That, and she was so done with her presumably regular crap that she openly laughed at her for bumping her noggin on the ride on her way off. As with most of our stories, I'm just kind of assuming that this is in the US, so color me a bit surprised that a person like this didn't immediately follow up her comeuppance with the threat of a lawsuit, even if that probably wouldn't have worked, as she was warned about knocking her head. Anyway, well done, keep bringing the Karens and Kens of this world to their knees, madam. Is this the hottest wing you have? I used to own a wing joint, nothing fancy but a good selection of wing flavors and beer. Inevitably, we'd have people come in and order the death wings. I like super spicy foods, so these were pretty darn hot. Of these people, about 5 to 10% would always start the joke and sarcastic conversation, "These aren't that hot, can't you do better? Yuck, 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 yuck." One of my best regulars, a dentist who fancied himself a gardener, decided to help us out and planted a ghost pepper bush. At the time, that was the hottest pepper in the world, and he'd bring us the bounty of his harvest. And he would intentionally underwater the bush so the peppers would be as hot as they could be. When he would bring us the peppers, I would grind them, seeds and all, into a nice paste, which I would combine with our Deathwing sauce, and keep on the side for when our spicy wing connoisseurs would show up and complain about the Deathwing sauce not being hot enough. I would only serve them one Deathhead wing, which seemed like a fitting name. I'd make them wear gloves to eat it to prevent capsaicin burns on their skin, and I would specifically tell them about the heat they were about to get into to try to dissuade them from eating this culinary monstrosity. By the time we got through all this, every single person now viewed this as an insult to their manlyhood. By the way, never had a woman complain about the heat, but would sometimes ask if there was another level they could try. And once I insulted someone's manlyhood, they could not be stopped from eating this wing. So they did. The fun thing about capsaicin oil is that it can often take a few seconds to kick. Usually just enough time for the person to scarf down the wing and start to smugly tell us how it wasn't that hot. And then the heat would begin. And once it started, it was relentless. And the wing was free, by the way, but the cup of milk after was $20. I never had a single person ask for a second wing. So, what do you say? Am I the jerk? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have our second case in a row of an individual who technically behaves like a jerk, but in this case subjects it purely on mostly deserving victims. In this case, macho idiots who somehow equate their masculinity to the level of spicy food that they can consume. And although this doesn't quite bring them to the same level as some of the jerks we deal with on this channel, the willingness to bristle and jump into harm's way when a better-informed individual gives them some good advice does make their downfall all the more delicious. Since we've encountered this kind of aforementioned jerk author twice in a row, I think we have to come up with a name for them. Rogue jerk? Dark jerk? Jerk vigilante? Let's go with that for now. Anyway, you're an evil person for charging $20 for a cup of milk, but it is undeniably hilarious and seems to only inflict your physical torture on big-headed idiots anyway. So go hard as far as I'm concerned. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Manager wanted everything I do during a workday written down. Request granted. Some context, worked in an outsourcing company. Before I joined the team, there were 2 people doing my job. Both left before I joined. I was alone, doing the job of 2 people. Weekly reports being sent to the client's head, and the client would visit our job site once a year. So here goes. As a means of control and reporting, there is a general mailbox to where clients should send all requests that need to be addressed. Had to deal with about 30 to 40 people from the client side plus the client head. They didn't give a crap about said mailbox and would always email my inbox, ignoring the general one almost always. Since I was alone and doing the work of 2 people, I was almost always behind on the workload and would get the idiots on the other side constantly complaining to the client's head, who in turn would complain to my managers, asking how it was possible that I can't deal with 7 or 8 daily emails and be so behind on his work. Weekly report stated I was only getting 7 or 8 emails from the client a day, completely ignoring the fricking phone, personal inbox, Skype chat, which were the ways people constantly contacted me every day. So the client head complains to managers and escalates me for being a lazy idiot that can't even handle a few emails a day. The managers set up a meeting to grill me. They say, "You always look so busy and you're only getting a handful of emails a day and are constantly behind on your work. How is this possible? Our clients aren't happy and you either improve dramatically or we'll have to replace you." I explained that general mailbox wasn't the only thing I did, mentioning all the other means through which client idiots were requesting things. They clearly knew, as they had 2 people before me doing the job. The problem was they'd both left and the position was empty for 3 months before I took over. The backlog was spectacular. The amount of crap they were taking from the client every week was just hilarious. Even better for me, as no one else spoke the language. 2 raises in the first 6 months. So the solution management came up with was to show the client head what was being done. I was told I needed to register on an Excel sheet everything. Everything I did during the day. I asked for clarification. You mean emails and calls, right? No. Everything. And email the Excel at the end of the workday. So here goes my malicious compliance. I did exactly what I was told, wrote down everything I did during the workday, even including bathroom, smoke, and coffee breaks. A client writes on Skype, I write down the timestamp when the client asks for something and timestamp of each and every reply. all adding to an Excel at around 500 lines per day, with my personal favorite of adding a line at the end. Time wasted to fill in sheet? 1 hour. One of my managers laughs when he sees my full compliance, and the other ones, not so much, but they know they can't do crap because I did what I was told. A few months later, when the client head visits, he tells me he freaking loved it. I was told to stop doing it on the 3rd day. They were now aware of what I did during the day. And let's be honest, by the time they'd got me doing it, they had inadvertently let me know that my job was very secure, regardless of my competence or lack thereof. No one else could speak the language to communicate with the client. It really helped that only a couple of the locals could speak English. Took them a year to find someone else who spoke the language. That sounds like an incredibly stressful and thankless job without all the pressure of your managers and clients adding to it, so well done. I don't know if anyone, including your higher-ups, could have ever accused you of being a jerk. This is a wonderful middle finger to the people implying that you somehow aren't doing your 2-person job sufficiently, despite having all the information to know that you're clearly doing as well as someone completely swamped with too many duties possibly could do. Definitely one of those workplace, do better. How? Just do it situations. And it sounds like everyone made the best of it as they could. Not entirely sure if your little Google spreadsheet changed things, but hopefully they stopped treating you like crap afterwards. Or maybe hired someone to help run things smoothly the way they had before. But let's be honest, if they feel like you are barely covering a job required by 2 people and saving them a whole bunch of money, they might just see how far they can push it. Classic workplace. How to shake hands with 3 world leaders in less than a minute with no security credentials. Back in '89, Ray Hanachyan was sworn in as Canada's new Governor-General, Canadian envoy to the Crown. This was a big deal for me because I was best friends with his son. So my mum and I got invited to the inaugural gala in Ottawa. We were flown in on a Gulfstream. I'd never been on a plane before, and would be staying at Rideau Hall, the Governor-General's official residence. To properly document this august event, I borrowed my uncle's very expensive, very impressive-looking camera and lenses, and also got a new but used suit. I felt pretty darn important for a shy grade 10 kid. Anyway, I was waiting in line with the rest of the plebs to be ushered in to stand at the back in the House of Commons, when I was approached by 2 RC MP officers who asked me to step out of the line. Of course, my immediate thought was, oh crap, what did I do? They informed me that I was in the wrong line and to please go with them. Confused, I looked around and then down at myself, and saw the expensive camera dangling from my neck, partially obscuring the lanyard that had allowed me into the grounds. Holy crap, they thought I was press! I always looked older than my actual age back then. I glanced over to my mum and she silently mouthed, "Go." And so off I go to the press gallery. The RCs plop me into a cluster of photographers from the national press, and suddenly I'm sharing the same bird's-eye view as Sandy Ronaldo and Peter Mansbridge. They're the Barbara Walters and Tom Brokaw of Canada. I snap away happily and hobnob with members of the Fifth Estate for a bit, and head for the stairs to go find my mum. Once again, I'm stopped by the RCs. Well, the jig is up, I thought. "Sir, the press conferences are through the other exit behind you." What? The what? Once again, I'm led into another room I have no business being in, and in the span of 20 minutes I've met Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre, Mulroney, Shrtain, Bouchard, Turner, Clark, and a pack of others. These names might not mean much to non-Canadians, but trust me, these were some of the biggest, haunchiest honchos in Canadian politics for 3 decades. The only ones who knew I didn't belong were Ray himself and Roy Romano, my province's future premier. They just did a double take and thought the whole thing was hilarious. They never ratted me out. Classy guys. And yeah, parents were a lot more hands-off back then. What can I say? I was a child of the 70s and 80s, an era when safety equipment was for construction workers, and having fun was defined as hold my root beer. Amazing I lived to see 20, honestly. So there you go. 3 prime ministers, 1 former, 1 current, and 1 future. All because I didn't own my own camera. What a surreal experience. Also, I can't imagine that it would happen in this day and age. If I were to end up in the parliament of my home country, I think I would either end up in a jail cell or be dead before I'd hit the ground. To think that just having a suit and a camera got you dragged into a room with every major Canadian political figure of the time in your adolescence is absolutely wild. Is this a Canada thing as much as anything else? I definitely can't see this happening in the US or the UK. So you may be adding to that notion that Canada is a funny little joke country that the rest of the world seems to have. That said, there's also something to be said for confidence and just behaving like you belong in a place, so maybe that's what you had going for you. In any case, fun story. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that she's a jerk? My best childhood friend just became a lawyer and then dumped her boyfriend. Her and I had grown up in poverty. We hadn't had much opportunities for an education. For young women in our area, our options were retail, substance dealing, being a working girl, or hoping a rich guy would notice us. For guys, it was retail, substance dealing, or finding one of the few factory jobs remaining. I got lucky, I managed to date a med student, and he helped open doors for me, and I've become a teacher in a school in a lower socioeconomic area to provide those opportunities. My husband is now a doctor. My friend tried that option, but she was not as lucky. She was working minimum wage retail at age 25. While doing so, she got friendly with a factory worker, a male in his 30s, and who came by regularly, and they started dating. He knew he wasn't the academic type, school wasn't for him, but he also saw potential in my friend and encouraged her to go to school. She had dreams of becoming a criminal prosecutor, and he encouraged her not to give up. He took out whatever loan he could find so that she could get an education. He supported her through and through, did the housework, worked extra shifts, everything so she could get an education. My friend persevered, graduated, and became a lawyer. Shortly after, she broke up with her boyfriend, just as he planned on proposing to her. She said that as a professional, she had no interest being married to a working-class man and that she deserves a real man. I was horrified and told her that she's betraying a man who supported her through all this and made her what she is. She got mad and said that it's not the woman's job to pay the bills and that I'm a hypocrite because my husband makes a lot more than me. She said further that the idea of marriage as a life partnership is a patriarchal construct, that she has the right to date whomever she wants, and that as a feminist I should be supporting her. I told her that not only is she a major jerk, she's giving feminists a bad name because feminism means women financially supporting their male partners as much as in the reverse. Some updates: I'm no longer friends with her. Yes, he's on the hook for the loans, and she has no intent on paying them back. Unfortunately, he isn't doing well, and I worry that he might fall into the incel or red pill or men going their own way worldview. He's now seen this and is thankful for all the support he's gotten in the comments. He's still deeply hurt, but my husband and I are right now focused on him. Your former friend is completely and indisputably the jerk in this story, and I honestly don't think you'd find a single person who thinks otherwise. I'm not sure how much of a feminist rant a male YouTube commentator who spends his days dragging Karens can go on, but surely you can't simultaneously be an advocate for wage equality while denigrating your former partner for his lack of perceived income. And that's not even taking into account the fact that she had bled him white under false pretenses before leaving. This is why people hate lawyers. Profession aside, I'll never understand how someone can be so completely fine with destroying the life of someone who's shown them nothing but unconditional support for years on end. And given that most of our posts come from the US, a country where student debt is a truly crippling thing to most people below a certain income, the amount of debt that a law degree must accrue has to be completely absurd to your average factory worker. Obviously, we don't know these people, but it sounds like she's set a more or less decent man down a dark path. My neighbors kept whining about my Christmas decorations, so I kept adding to them. I own a big house, I'm talking old Victorian type that I restored. An older couple moved in across the street this summer and started complaining about everything I did. They didn't like the siding I was having put on, my front door color was ugly, they hated all the different colored flowers that I planted, and they didn't like the idea of a young, single woman living in a house I clearly couldn't afford. They actually told me that last part. I tried to ignore them until Christmas, and then I put up lights and a few blow-ups, but nothing the other neighbors didn't do themselves. This couple started complaining right off. Christmas offended them. I just smiled and added more. At this moment, my house could be seen on Mars. To add to the petty, I told the neighbor next to me, and he told another and then another. You get the picture. As an update, I did find out another reason why they're so teed off at me. I had 4 offers to buy my house last spring, and I refused them all. Turns out, it was them. Well, I think we're all in agreement that you're definitely not the jerk here. The fact that they openly admitted that they based some of their assumptions on your age and gender makes any of the other petty grievances they've come up with lose a lot of air in my books. Got to appreciate them at least being forthright about their weird bigotry and making it so much easier to dislike them without nuance. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to check out some great music, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.